cyclists shouldn't be full speed running red lights, but I do believe they shouldn't be waiting for the green signal as cars do, and perhaps by the end of this video you will too. Depending on where you live, over the past few decades, multiple states have legalized the Idaho stop, a practice in which bicyclists are allowed to treat stop signs as yield signs and red lights as stop signs. In 1982, the first state that passed such a law was, you may have guessed, Idaho of all places, but the year following the law's implementation, Idaho saw bicyclist injuries from crashes fall 14.5%. When Delaware enacted its own version of the law in 2017, they saw traffic collisions at intersections involving cyclists fall 23% in the following 2.5 years. And in my opinion, it's common sense. The Idaho stop removes the ambiguity of right-of-way that four-way stops are known for. Instead, it replaces it with a well-defined norm that cyclists get the right-of-way. However, despite this evidence that the Idaho stop is safer for cyclists, why haven't a greater number of jurisdictions adopted the procedure? I'm not too sure. It could just be that cyclist safety isn't a priority for many jurisdictions, which is a shame, because as I pointed out before, a lot more people would cycle if they believed it was safer. And step one to that is enacting laws and building infrastructure that prioritizes cyclist safety. But for the crowd of haters, soon-to-be waiters at my table of success, here are a few reasons why I and many others utilize the Idaho stop, despite its not completely legal status. First, it reduces conflict between cars and cyclists. Proceeding through the intersection at a red light, especially on roads without bike lanes, I'm able to get ahead of the group of cars or platoon behind me. Since it's fairly unlikely I'd catch up to the platoon ahead, this allows me to ride in the gap between platoons where I don't need to worry about cars constantly making unsafe passes. Frequently, I'm able to make my next turn without even having to interact with a single car. If I were to wait at a red light and proceed with the green, car after car will start passing me one by one, often making close, unsafe passes. Worst case scenario, a car further back in line may not be able to see why the car ahead is driving slowly and may try to pass that car, only to collide with the cyclist ahead. If that sounds familiar, that is the exact situation that tragically killed Johnny Goudreau and his brother Matthew on a rural road in New Jersey.
The brothers were actually in town for their sister's wedding. Police say a driver that we now know has been identified as Sean Higgins plowed his Jeep into the two while he was trying to pass another SUV on a road and then took off from the scene.
But what about roads with bike lanes? Why should bicyclists be able to proceed through red signals on those roads? Well, in this case, it's more about efficiency and fairness. In the majority of the US, traffic signals are timed for cars. You've probably experienced what traffic engineers call the green wave. When you're driving down the street and just as you arrive at the stoplight, it turns green, and this happens stoplight after stoplight after stoplight. If you weren't aware, that is completely intentional, and those signals are designed to allow cars an uninterrupted journey as long as they're traveling the speed limit. However, the speed limit on most roads is much faster than the average cyclist can reach, so while a cyclist may be able to catch the first few signals of the green wave, eventually they'll get left behind, and that's entirely due to a system that's solely designed to benefit drivers. Of course, the Dutch have figured out a solution to this, creating a system that prioritizes public transit, pedestrians, and cyclists instead of drivers. I did want to mention this because it pretty much eliminates the need for both the Idaho stop and jaywalking, but the US is nowhere near that level yet. However, I have already spoken a bit about this topic in past videos. You should watch those once you get the chance, and I will probably speak about them more in future videos. You should definitely stick around and subscribe to see those when they come out. But for all of you yelling, what about the pedestrians, the poor, feeble pedestrians? Well, if executed correctly, the Idaho stop will still protect them as well. A bicyclist is required to yield at a crossing to pedestrians in every single case, the same way a car should yield to bicyclists. The danger to pedestrians isn't the Idaho stop part, it's the failing to yield part, and that's a whole different issue. Too often I see cyclists blast through red lights without a care in the world, even if there are pedestrians waiting to cross. However, in a separate doom scroll on Reels, I came across this video.
Mais les piétons sont fragiles.
It's in French, so I'm gonna give a loose translation. Essentially, our protagonist is saying that pedestrians are fragile, and we should all be yielding to them, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it's a simple act of kindness that can drastically improve somebody's day. Since watching this video, I've tried really hard to yield to pedestrians in all situations. Some people might even say excessively. However, to my surprise, I got some of these same reactions. People were thankful, people were flattered, and people just frankly smiled. At the end of the day, I'd rather have people associate cyclists with kind people that let them cross the street than with rude people that nearly hit them in the crosswalk. I found a lot of the time pedestrians will wait for cyclists because they, of course, don't want to get hit by a cyclist. But pedestrians should not be operating based out of fear. Pedestrians shouldn't have to fear cyclists the same way cyclists shouldn't have to fear cars. Showing pedestrians that cyclists respect them will only increase the amount of respect the general population has for people who cycle. It's actually heartwarming how often you insisting a pedestrian to go first will make them, blush. Who knew treating people with respect would make them feel good? Unfortunately, as long as there are rules, there will be rule breakers, from reasons ranging from naivete to corporate pressure to flat-out narcissism. But that has nothing to do with the Idaho stop and its safety benefits. That is an entirely separate enforcement issue. As policymakers and urban planners, the best we can do is try to legislate and plan around that, such as not criminalizing the things bicyclists do to keep themselves safe due to poor infrastructure. Another great example being riding on sidewalks at a walking speed when road conditions are unsafe. But to get back on topic, in the worst case scenario in which a cyclist does hit a pedestrian, the consequences are low compared to a car. You hit a pedestrian with a car, even at a slow speed, more likely than not, they're seeing some pretty serious damage, perhaps even passing away. You hit a pedestrian on a bike while going at a slow speed, the worst you'll see is a bruise and a scratch. And that's due to the massive size and weight difference between cars and bicycles. The average bicyclist is only about 30 pounds heavier than the average pedestrian, because bikes on average weigh about 30 pounds. However, the average car weighs about 4,000 pounds more than the average pedestrians, because the average car weighs about 4,000 pounds. That said, it really makes no sense to subject cyclists to the same rules and regulations as cars. Bikes are not cars and should not be treated as such. For example, jaywalking is allowed in New York City, and bicyclists who are much closer in weight to a pedestrian than a driver should have laws that reflect that. If it's acceptable to get off your bike and walk it across the intersection, then how different is it really to ride across it at jogging speed? I mean, bikes are already allowed to cross with the walk signal to get a head start on drivers. City Hall, you're almost there. You're really so close to actually getting it. This all works because bikes can be safely and easily maneuvered amongst large groups of people in ways a car never could. It makes no sense to hold them to the same standard as a 2-ton vehicle, in which the users are detached from the reality of their environment. And if you're a motorist and you still think it's just not fair, wait at the stoplight like the rest of us, no. We should be making it as easy as possible to cycle because it's better for the environment, it's better for your individual physical health, and it's better for your mental health. Happy New Year. I'll see you guys in 2026. 2025 has been a great year for me and this channel. We just hit 2K subscribers. I'm happy you guys are all here. I appreciate comments. I try to read as many of them as possible, even the negative ones, and then I delete them. But no, I just thank you for being here. It's been a great year. I can't wait to see what 2026 has in store, and I can't wait to share more about urbanism, my future in urban planning, and what it's like to live in an ever-changing New York City. Man, if you guys like this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Joel. You're watching Micro Mobile. I'll see you very soon. Okay, bye. I'm Randy. Bye.